All right. Listen, please. We got to quit the chatter so we can stay focused. Like we said, previously we have solved equations in this form, something squared equals something, by taking the square root of each side. What do we got to remember when we take the square root of both sides? Plus or minus symbol, right? Okay. This method also works when one side of an equation is a perfect square trinomial and the other side is a constant. So we're going to turn our trinomials into perfect square trinomials. Okay? That's what completing the square is called. Now, in this one, it's already a perfect square trinomial. That's number 4 on our list when we factor. Are those both positive perfect squares? Yes. So I showed you a while back the 1, 2, 3 test, didn't I? No, I thought I did. Okay. To get number 1, all right, let's do a different color here. You take the square root of the x squared, which is x, right? To get number 2, you take the square root of the 64, which is 8. Yeah. Some people wrote 32 yesterday on the quiz. All right. Number 3 is number, let me do this, number 1 answer times number 2 answer. What's x times 8? 8x. What did we do with that 8x to figure out if it was one of those perfect square trinomials? What was the relationship between number 3 and b? Remember? What's the relationship now? What's this compared to that? Half, yes. So if number 3 answer is half of the b, it's one of those perfect square trinomials. It's one of those special ones. Okay? So here's what you do to factor it. You only need to make one set of parentheses. Most of the time when we factor, thank you, Michael. Most of the time when we factor, we have 2 sets of parentheses, right? Well, this one you only need 1 set. What goes in the set of parentheses is what you got for number 1 and what you got for number 2 and whatever this sign is. The sign of the b. All right? You see where I got the x and the minus and the 8. Okay? And when you factor like this, one of these, you put a little square out there. So this problem looks like this now. Because that trinomial was one of those special trinomials called a trinomial square or perfect square trinomial. All right? So again, the first and the third term are both positive perfect squares. And, you know, a lot of you could do this in your head too. You guys know what the square root of that is, right? And you know the square root of that, right? So that's 8x. Is 8x half of 16x. Right? So you don't have to write all this out, but I'm just telling you what you could do in your head to see if it's one of those real quick. Does that make sense? Now, when we're at this point, what can we do to both sides to get rid of that? Square root, yeah. Okay? So I'm going to square root both sides. Again, your rule for solving equations is what you do to one side, you got to do the other, right? So, like we've done in the past, we're going to put a plus or minus in front there, just like we were supposed to do on the quiz, which some of us forgot. All right, what's the square root of 100? 10. And what's the square root of x minus 8 squared? X minus 8 itself, right? Questions on this part so far? Okay. Am I done? Did I figure out what x equals yet? No. So how do I figure out what x equals? Yeah, add the 8, right? When we get the x alone. All right, so my answer is 8 plus or minus 10. Since these work out nice, whole numbers, find both answers. What's 8 plus 10? And what's 8 minus 10? Negative 2, right? Okay? So if I were to substitute 18 back in for x in those two spots, or negative 2 in those two spots, what's my answer going to be? 100. Yeah. I'll get 100. All right? So, it says, what's it say? Solve using square roots. So it's giving you a hint that it's one of those, right? Yesterday I would have said solve by factoring, because that's what we just did. We just factored it. Okay? You had a couple that you had to, or just one, I guess, you had to solve by factoring. You had 4 factoring problems, but only one you were actually solving an equation. And again, some of you forgot to finish it and tell me what x equals. You just left it in factored form. Okay, just little mistakes. Any questions on that example? Okay, let's look at another one. All right. Are these two positive, the first and the third, positive perfect squares?
Yeah.
Yes. What's the square root of x squared? What's the square root of 4? Multiply those. Is that half of 4x?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what goes in here, Joe?
X minus 2x or plus 2x.
Yeah. Not 2x. Just these, the 1 and the 2.
X plus 2.
Yeah. The 1, I didn't put the 1 and the 2 and the 3, but okay. And what do I have to remember when I write x plus 2? Square it. Yes. Good factor. All right. Then Alexa.
Would you be able to put it back up on that board?
Did it just go away?
Yeah.
I don't know, because the other day it did that and the internet was down when it did that. But I can try.
Okay, if you can.
It says we can do it. All right, so you guys finish that one up? Go ahead and finish it up. And then tell me what the answer is.
I got it. Because I'm smart.
Sure.
I got the 44 and 45. Congratulations.
Tell him to quit bothering me. Okay.
Wait.
Hey, do your, I know.
What's the 2 answers? That's right. Find the 2 answers, because they're both whole numbers. Find both answers.
Don't
Oh.
No, I didn't. I just finished it.
What's that number?
6, and I think that's 6.
Okay. Smart.
Why do you-
Negative 6 minus 2.
Negative.
Yeah, so that's your answer, that, and then everything.
We're not going to. You're not.
Maddie, what do we do now? Yep, do the radical. So what's on the right? X plus 2, yeah, that's left, right? What's on the right? What? Louder? Right, good. We all okay? Then we're gonna do with that 2. Subtract it, right? So, okay, so there's 2 problems there. Do we understand that? Okay, the negative 2 plus 6 and the negative 2 minus 6. Now, sometimes this won't be a perfect square. You'll just have maybe the square root of 20, right? You still need to simplify it. Okay, what's 4 times 5? What do I do with that 4? That square root of 4 is 2, so I would make it 2 radical 5, right? Just like you've done. So then your answer would be like negative 2 plus or minus 2 radical 5. Okay? So it's not always going to work out really nice like this. It might have a radical in it. That's okay. All right? Those 2 examples make sense. Not too bad, are they? Okay. This part, all right? The completing the square part. What we're going to do is turn a normal trinomial into one of these, the A or the B type, where we're going to have a positive perfect square for both. When we do this, and notice, what was my A value for both of these? 1, right? In order to complete the square, come on, all right? A must be 1 in order for us to be able to do this, okay? So if it's a 2 or 3 or 4 or something, we're going to divide everything by that 2, 3, or 4 first. All right, so here is 2 of the 3 terms of a trinomial. In order to make this one of those special ones, fill in this box, we have to do what with the B value? What's that saying? Divide by 2, and then what? Square it. That's how you complete the square. So we would take this 6 divided by 2, which is 3, and what's 3 squared? That's where that 9 came from. Sure.
I'm distracted.
Okay. All right, so whatever that is, we're going to take half of it and square it to fill in the box, or I put a blank, I don't put a box. Okay? But again, in order to do that, there's no number in front of your x squared. It's a 1. We just never write it. Okay, the A value has to be 1. Okay, Lee?
Yeah.
All right. So let's look at an example here. It says complete the square, then factor it. Okay, so just add a blank to complete it. It's always plus the blank. Always what? Plus the blank. All right. What's my B value? 14. What's 14 divided by 2? So I put a 7 in there, right? No. I have to put 7 squared. Right? You got to put a 49 in there. Okay? So remember, the blank is b divided by 2, whatever that number is, and then square it. Okay? Always b divided by 2 squared. All right. Then it says factor it. Okay? So what's my number 1? X. What sign? What's my number 2? Remember, what did we do? What did we do? What did we do? We did the square root of 64 and the square root of x squared, right? Okay, so we do the square root of x squared and the square root of 49. Okay? That's all they wanted. Oops, what did I forget? The square, yeah. That's all they wanted us to do there, to complete the square, make it a special trinomial, and then factor it to look like that. Just giving us practice doing that. That makes sense? Okay. You guys try that one.
You just said half of 400. Half of 400 is 20.
What's in the blank?
Okay, well, stop saying half of 400.
400. 20 squared.
Yep.
Half of 40, 20. 20 times 20 is 400. It's always plus, right? Okay? Even though this b is negative 40, right? Divided by 2, remember, it's like this, right? What's a negative 20 times a negative 20? Positive 400. That's why it's always plus. Okay? Some of you do this. Oops. Wasn't where I wanted it. All right? Your calculator follows order of operations. It's going to do 20 squared first, then the negative in front. Okay? That's wrong. As far as negative 20 times negative 20. We should understand that. Okay? So, what goes in the front? Plus or minus? What goes in the back? 20 squared. Beautiful. You guys are so smart. All right. Angela, what goes in the blank? What? Well, if this was 18 to start, that would be 81, but it's 9 to start. No. What did we divide by? 2. All right, so what's 9 divided by 2? And then square that. Okay, now here's what I do. What kind of number is 9? Starts with an O.
Positive.
Odd. That's P. That is a positive number, yes. But it's an odd number, right? So when you have an odd number for b, here's what I do. I leave it as a fraction. I just put the b over 2. Okay? And then I square it. What's 9 squared, Angela? You already told me earlier. Good. And what's 2 squared? 4. Right. So we're just going to put it 81 over 4. When we start solving these, leaving it as a fraction is easier, I think. Because when I take the square root of x squared, what do I get?
9.
Square root of x squared.
Yeah.
What sign?
Plus
Plus. What's the square root of these?
9 and 2.
9 and 2. We know those already, right? So I just write it like that instead of 4.5. It's not wrong if you put x plus 4.5 and square it. I won't mark it wrong. But as we try to solve these, I think it'll be easier for you using the fractions. Okay, so when it's odd, I just write it as a fraction. The odd number over 2. It's always going to be over 4 because it's always over 2, right, to start. So I'm going to put what? What goes in the blank? What's 3 squared? 9. What's 2 squared? 4. Simple. Okay? So, when I factor it, square root of x squared, the sign in front of the b, the square root of that, which is what your b over 2 was, right? That making sense?
Yeah.
So whenever you see a b value that's odd, I just write it over 2 and square the top and the bottom. Okay? So it's always over 4. And then we go from there. All right. Solving when we complete the square. All right. It says collect variable terms on one side of the equation and constant terms on the other. The variable terms are the x squared and the x. The constant term is the c. Put the c on the right. Okay. As needed, divide both sides by a to make the coefficient be what? 1. We said that right in the beginning, right? Complete the square by adding b over 2 squared to both sides of the equation. Factor like we just learned. Take the square root of both sides, like we already did, and then solve it. Okay? So, where should the 12x be? Over here on the left. How do I move it over? Minus 12x. Alright, so we're going to write x squared minus 12x plus blank equals negative 20 plus blank. Whatever you do to one side, you got to do to the other. That's why I have to add a blank on the other side. How do I fill in the left blank?
Negative 12.
Right, what's 12 divided by 2?
6.
What's 6 squared?
36.
36. Questions? That's just what we've been doing, right? Noel? Factor that left side, please.
X, minus,
Yeah, squared. Joe, what's the right side? What's this side? I don't see any X's.
Negative 16.
Oh, no, 16.
16, thank you. Just add them. Okay. Leading, what do I do now? What did we do earlier today?
Yeah.
To get rid of this.
Oh, square root.
Yeah, we all know that now, right? We just did a couple, right? A few minutes ago? You guys know what to do now. What's the left side? X minus 6. What's the right side? Close. Yeah, plus or minus 4. So, Morrison, what are my two answers?
No idea.
Come on.
Minus 6. Plus 6? Oh, okay.
What are my two answers, Morrison?
6 plus 4? 10?
Good. What's the other one?
2?
Good. Morrison, look at you go. Good job. We good? Okay. So we turned it in. We completed the square. We turned it into one of those special trinomials so that we could factor it to be a square so we could square root both sides. Okay? So we're just kind of adding on stuff we've already learned. Okay? So what needs to happen here? Oh! What do we got to do here?
Right, I'm gonna be honest, I don't know for this one.
What do we do on this one?
Do the x the same size as the x squared?
Right. So do we need to do that in this one?
Yes.
Okay. What do we do with that negative 20? What do we
On the other side?
want it over there, right?
Yeah.
So what are we going to do here?
I don't know, put that one on the other side.
Yeah, put it on the other side. So move the 4x over and move the 27 over. Okay? You want the x squared and the x on the left. You want the constant, the number without the variable, on the right. That's the first step. Also, what's a supposed to be? 1. Is it 1? Yeah. What if it was 2? What would I have had to do first? Divide everything by 2. Okay? They're going to do that to you. One of these times, they're going to throw a 3x squared up there on you. You're going to have to divide everything by 3 first. All right, so I have x squared minus 4x. Those cancel, right? These cancel. What do I have to add also to complete the square? The blanks. 30. Michael,
Yeah.
what goes in the blank? What's B?
27.
B.
Negative 27.
B.
Negative 4.
Yes. Divided by 2, what's that equal?
Negative 2.
Square
4.
it. There you go. No. Alex, what's this?
X minus 2.
Very good. Not yet. Ellie, now what? Good. So what's the left side, Ellie? What's the right side? Can we do a factor tree? No, right? The only factors of 31 are 1 and 31, right? So what do we write? Good. Right. So sometimes, like I said, you're not going to get a perfect square there. That's okay. What's my final answer, Haley? Yeah, that's all you can do. Nothing else you can do there. That's okay. That's an acceptable answer. That'll happen sometimes. You have a radical in your answer. It won't be two whole numbers like we've been getting. Okay? What's this called?
Quadratic equation.
Completing the square, solving quadratic equations. Right. Okay? So, I think that's about it. There's another one, but you guys got this now, right?
Oh.
Again, why am I